We wish a happy new year. Welcome back to the program, the one and only Donald Trump. How are you, sir?
Hello, Sean.
All right. Now, before we get down to business, I'm going to have some fun with you. So you have the Celebrity Apprentice coming on, and I watch the show every week. I really enjoy it.
Right.
All right. Here are my predictions, people that will do very well. Okay?
Go ahead.
Adam Carolla.
Okay, smart guy.
Debbie Gibson.
Very good.
Arsenio Hall.
Very good.
Dee Snider.
Very good.
I'm just checking, so I'm on measure early on. And
last time you predicted a guy named John Rich.
Yes, I did.
And he won.
John Rich was.
I hope that prediction didn't influence my judgment. Okay, I try to keep that pretty much out. But you did predict. You liked John Rich a lot, and he turned out he's so different. You know, you think of him as a quiet guy. He is a tough cookie.
He is one. Look, he came to my 50th birthday party over the holiday. I turned 50 on December 30th.
Wow!
And we had a great time. And he actually played a couple of songs, and we become very close. He's the only guy in the world, because I'm a real big loser in my personal life. I never go out. He's the only guy that got me and Mark Levin to belly up to a bar and do a shot.
Wow, that's great. Mark Levin's a great guy.
Yeah, he is. He is. He said, you know what's fascinating before we get to business again? Everywhere I went, people ask me now about you.
Right.
And they want to know what you're like. Because I think people suspect, well, he's this rich guy from New York. He's not down to earth. And I'm like, no, it's just the opposite. And I'm like, you'd be surprised how down to earth you are.
Well, I think I'm down to earth. I have a lot of good relationships with people, so that's good. And, you know, they assume I'm a little bit different. I always tell people I'm much different than you think. So, you know, I've had a lot of fun.
Well, it's funny because you tell me every night you have to go out to one of these dinners or charities that you're involved in. It's a pain in the neck.
I don't love it. I don't love it. The black ties, you know, the black tie dinners. I don't love it.
If it says black tie, I usually write back, can I wear jeans just for fun?
Exactly. So,
all right. What do you think of the Iowa caucus results?
Well, it's very interesting. And, you know, you have to hand Santorum, you have to give him a little credit. I mean, this guy was at 1% and just really was amazing how he even hung in there. And he took tremendous abuse, and he hung in. But, you know, there's a man named Bob Vanderplaat, and he gave an endorsement about a week and a half ago. And he's a great guy, and I got to know him a little bit. And he's a great guy. And his endorsement was unbelievable, because if you look at Santorum, he started really shooting up like a rocket right after Bob gave that endorsement. And Bob, you know, has tremendous power there, and especially with the religious groups, certain religious groups, and great groups, great people. And when he gave that endorsement, and I know it wasn't easy to give him, because he was, you know, Rick was hovering around 2 and 3%, and all of a sudden you come out with this endorsement out of nowhere, and that was really, I think, the catalyst. I think without that he wouldn't have done, you know, obviously nearly as well. It was an amazing endorsement.
You know, I think the endorsement certainly played a big part, but I give him a lot of credit for his perseverance, his hard work.
I do too.
And his political skills. I think he performed pretty well in all the debates. He didn't get a lot of credit for it at the time, but he was steady Eddie, as he described himself.
Absolutely.
Could you vote for him?
Well, you know, I don't want to even get into that yet, but, you know, because I'm going to make a decision on what I'm doing in terms of everything. But, you know, I give, you know, when I'm often asked to make speeches on success, how do you become successful? And one of the things I say is never, ever quit, never, ever give up. And I give him tremendous credit for not having given up. I mean, he should have given up. By all standards, he should have given up. He was at 1% for most of the time and sort of ridiculed and laughed at. Somebody said he'd oftentimes make speeches and there'd be one person in the audience, okay?
That's true. He told me the story. He had one person.
And yet he'd, you know, hung in, and now he's doing well. Now, as to whether or not he has the organization to bring him through, because you do need at some point organization, and we'll see what happens, but I give him a lot of credit. But I also give Bob a lot of credit.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, the new Rasmussen poll came out, and it always out of Iowa, the winner or winners usually get a big bump. Now, interestingly, Romney went down. He was at 43. He's now at 29%.
Whoa.
Santorum is at 21%. Gingrich still hanging in there at 16%.
No kidding. This just happened.
This just came out.
Wow, that's a big dip.
It's why do you think it is? I mean, do you think it's Romney, anti-Romney?
I don't understand it. You know, I've gotten to know Mitt Romney pretty well, and he's a very good guy, very likable guy, smart guy. And I told him, I said, at some point you got to take off with this thing. That's an amazing number that you're just telling me in terms of the polls, because he was at 43 or 44, and now he came down to 29. So Santorum got a big bump, huh?
A huge bump. Oh, no. I mean, he was, I think in the poll prior, he was at 5%, and not necessarily a Rasmussen poll, but the poll
amazing.
I saw before. Let me ask you this, because this is the antithesis of you. I mean, you're just, you only know one speed, 100 miles an hour. You don't look back. You speak your mind. I mean, it's kind of the antithesis of your average politician. Do you think maybe Romney plays it too safe? It's worked for him. He won Iowa. 3 weeks ago, people didn't think he'd win.
He did. Not only did he win, in all fairness, I think more credit has to be given to him because he wasn't supposed to do well at all in Iowa.
That's right.
And he was going to not be at Iowa, and that way when he doesn't do well, he can say, well, I wasn't even there. Sort of like Huntsman said, well, he wasn't there. He got less than 1%, as he said, the famous one person that voted for him in Iowa in the state. But, at least he can say he wasn't there. And that was supposed to be with Romney, and he went out and he started seeing his numbers going up. He went and campaigned there very hard for a couple of weeks, and he ended up winning it. I mean, even if it's a few votes, but you have to give him a lot of credit for that, I think. He's got to break out. At some point he's got to get out of that 20 number, and he's got to get up to the 30s and 40s and obviously up into the 50s, right? Because that's what it's all about, is called let's break the 50 number. He's got to break out. It's amazing that he doesn't, frankly.
I'm like you. I've spent a lot of time with Mitt Romney. I really like him a lot. I think his family is outstanding. His wife, Ann, would make a great first lady. His kids are terrific. They come on my television program.
Right. I agree.
And the problem he's had, and I think why we have seen so many people challenge him, and all these people, Michelle Bachmann up and down, and Perry up and down, and Kaine up and down, and Newt up and down, and then Santorum surging at the last minute, is I don't think he's been able to convince people that he is a conviction conservative. And I asked him again about it last night. He talks about the things where he is conservative, but I
saw that.
I don't think he's convincing enough conservatives that he would govern in a way that would be dynamic enough, conservative enough, that would get the economy back running and going and be bold enough.
And yet other people have changed their minds, and people are convinced that that's what they really mean. He's having a hard time convincing people. It's very interesting.
It's odd to me, really.
He probably needs a Trump endorsement. If he had the Trump endorsement, I think maybe all of a sudden he'd be the rocket ship that he's supposed to be. It's an amazing thing, though, how he really... It just doesn't seem to, now you could also say the positive is he doesn't go down. Other people, they go up and they go down, right? No. He's been very steady. He's steady like a rock. But it does amaze me that somebody drops out and they lose 20 points of polling numbers, and the 20 points go to somebody else or they're split, but he doesn't pick them up. And that shouldn't be happening.
What do you think about the electability argument? I mean, do you agree that he's the most electable, or have you not made up your mind?
I think that the Republicans will win. I do think a third-party candidate can possibly kill that for the Republicans, and the right third-party candidate could win. But if there's a right third-party candidate, I believe the Republicans can't win.
You see, you're getting right into the area.
No, I do believe the Republicans. It's going to be a Republican president unless there's a third-party candidate who's good. If there's a really good third-party candidate, I think it's not going to be a Republican that wins. I don't think the Republican can win, but I think the third-party candidate can win.
Well, this is where I guess I was going to save this for later. And look, you and I have become friends.
Absolutely.
I like your opinions. I like your outspokenness. I think you're dead on about China. I don't know if you saw the report about the Chevy Volt now may be built in China.
No, it's terrible.
It's awful. But here's
By the way, a friend of mine sells luxury products in China. He said, "Oh, they tax me so much. They call it a luxury tax." I say, "Really? Do we have a luxury tax on Chinese goods coming in?" This guy pays a big luxury tax. He said it's very hard. He said basically they don't want us to be in China. They're trying to keep us out, so they call it a luxury tax.
Yeah, they walloped us again, and nobody in the media paid attention to us.
Nobody picks it up. Now, when they sell their crap to us, they don't pay tax. But we put it in, and this is a very substantial person. He sells goods to China. They call it a luxury tax because, they feel the Chinese people don't need to be buying this stuff. And he's telling me how impossible it is for him to get through the tax system of China. and nobody mentions it. And the vault, forget about the vault. How about all the trucks and everything else that they're taxing?
You know something?
It's really disgraceful, and we don't tax their product.
And the fact that they would raise this much money in taxes and there's zero response is kind of frightening. It's like, who's standing up for America's interests here?
Well, you know, when that article came out about a week ago, I saw it, frankly, in your favorite newspaper, the New York Times. And when that article came out, it was on the business section of the New York Times, and I read it again because I felt it couldn't be very important, where they started taxing trucks and various SUVs and everything else. And the taxes, by the way, we're not talking about a little tax. 22% was the number. So I thought I must have misread it, because why wouldn't that be on the front page of the New York Times? But it wasn't.
Are the people you do business with in China aware of how outspoken you are against them, and has it impacted your business at all?
Absolutely. They know. You know, in one way, they respect it. In fact, Business Week, Bloomberg Business Week recently did a story, what do the Chinese most want in the United States? And one of the 10 things, the top 10 things, anything Trump. Anything with the Trump name. Can you believe it? Which is interesting. But, yes, it does. If I'm going to do a deal in China, sometimes, like I have a lot of friends in China, they say, Donald, could we wait a little while? You're really killing us over here. But at the same time, they can't believe what they're getting away with. They absolutely cannot believe that our government does nothing.
A friend of mine who deals exclusively with China, and I told you about this guy, saw him over Christmas.
Right.
And he said, they're laughing at us.
Right, they are laughing.
Exactly. And they think that all right, so let me go to this. You, over the holiday, and you waited till I went on vacation, I know.
I know. I always like to do that.
Because I would have called you and irritated you, but you switched your voter registration independent. You left the GOP. Now there's a story out there that, in fact, you could be on the ballot in Texas.
That's right. People are trying to put me on the ballot, which I just heard about 2 days ago, by the way.
Okay, fair enough. You're not spearheading the effort.
But I heard about it 2 days ago. There's thousands of people that are trying to get me on the ballot in Texas, which is a hard ballot to get on, by the way.
All right, but you have not said definitively that you won't run. You're still leaving open the possibility. And I keep arguing with you that if you run third party, you're going to split the anti-Obama vote, and you're going to ensure that Obama gets 4 more years.
Or win. I really believe a good third party, and not Ron Paul, who I don't think would run because that would destroy his son's career. But I don't see Ron Paul running. But a really good third party candidate could win. I believe that.
You don't see it as splitting the anti-Obama
I don't think the Republicans could win, however, if you had a really good third-party candidate who tends to be conservative, and I'm very conservative.
Well, that's the point. Why would you want to run the risk, considering you see the damage Obama's doing?
I think the third party could win, though. I do believe the third-party candidate could win. I don't believe the Republicans could win. Now, that all being said, if I see somebody, and obviously I'm getting to know some people pretty well, if I see somebody that I think could be really, really good, and you know I have millions of people, and you're one of the people that understand, Meet the Press did a major poll, and I guess it was a CNN poll with somebody else, the day that I left, which is the day before that I left, where I said I wasn't going to run as a Republican, and they announced the show. And as you know, because I have the show, I'm not allowed to run because of horrible provisions, these equal time provisions. But when Meet the Press, I was leading in the polls. And I was number 1 in the polls.
But that was running for the Republican nomination also. That was that poll. For example, look, I think you should commission a poll.
Right.
And the main question on that poll should be, what impact would you have for the Republican candidate, and would you split the anti-Obama vote?
It wouldn't be a good impact. The reason it would not be good for the Republicans.
Look,
I agree with it.
Let's say you had a horrible poll and you only had 5%. That's it. That's the margin of error. 46% of Americans don't pay federal income taxes. That's a built-in base for the Democratic Party.
Right. But I think the numbers, and we've already done certain things, the numbers are very strong. I mean, if I decide to do it. But would I like to endorse somebody that I think would beat Obama, that I think would be really good, and would two things. It'd have to be really good, and could they beat Obama? The answer is I'd love to do that. You know, I love what I'm doing, Sean. I don't really relish running and doing all of that. And you know, I as you saw in my book, I had a book that did nicely, really nicely, and I actually put my financial disclosure forms in there. And, you know, a lot of people said, oh, he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to disclose. I don't care. I'm like an open book anyway. And I put the finances in there. I put my financials into the book, the summary sheets, which people were really, I think most people were pretty impressed. I hope you were impressed.
It's a lot more money than I have, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so it was good. I didn't mind doing it. I mean, I'm like an open book.
Look, I think the bottom line is anybody that gets in there, and this is, I think, Rick Santorum's challenge now. He is about to be brutalized. And when you were running, I mean, they went out, they even were trying to suggest, which was obscene, that you were a racist. You fought right back.
Right.
But Santorum now is going to have to withstand the scrutiny that he's not had heretofore.
Right. Well, they called me a racist because of the birth certificate, which a lot of people still agree with me. And by the way, there are a lot of people out there that say, why wasn't she ever registered in the hospital, et cetera, lots of things. When I wanted to see his marks in Columbia and Harvard, they called me a racist because I dared to ask for his marks. A lot of people say he was a terrible student, and I'd like to see. I hope he was a great student.
And by the way, their campaign is now asking for Mitt Romney's tax returns, and they won't reveal anything about Obama. All right, hang on. Donald Trump is with us. We're going to continue. I have a lot more to ask you when we come back. Quick break. 800-941-SEAN is our number. You want to be a part of the program. We'll check in with the program. We continue now with the one and only Donald Trump. All right, so you're leaving the door open, but you really don't want to run.
I would much rather endorse somebody that can beat Obama and can be a great president. I would much prefer that. And I'm looking. I mean, I'm looking very serious.
All right, but you've seen a lot of these candidates. You've met with Newt Gingrich. You've met with Mitt Romney. You've talked to these guys multiple times. I don't know if you've met Santorum yet.
I've spoken to him.
Okay. So all these candidates want your endorsement.
They really do.
I'm sure there are qualities in all of them that you like.
In the old days, they wanted my money, not my endorsement. Now they want my endorsement, not my money. It's very
they'll get the endorsement, then they'll ask for the money.
Much less expensive.
That's true. All right, so there's got to be some people here. Like, for example, I like Mitt Romney. I think he'd be very competitive against the president. I like Newt Gingrich. I think he's the smartest guy out there. He's got to stay disciplined. I think Rick Santorum
Well, he has been disciplined. If you think of it, he's taken tremendous abuse, and he hasn't really fought back. Now, he calls that discipline. And when he was in my office a month and a half ago, he said, when they attack me, I am going to be very stable. I am not going to go crazy. I'm not going to fight back. And I said, I think that's a big mistake. And now he's starting to fight back. But I felt it was a mistake. So when you say he wasn't disciplined, in a certain way, he was very disciplined because he didn't fight back.
I agree. And he's even acknowledging now he wanted to run, quote, the positive campaign.
Right.
$17 million in ads. It doesn't work.
Didn't work. And I told him when he was in my office, he told me he was going to do that. And I said, I think you're making a big mistake, but that's up to you.
Well, all right. So now he's coming out strong and heavy against Romney. He feels the super PAC attacks against him were unfair.
Right. It's also more of his personality. I mean, he changed his personality. It's like a great golfer, and he decides to change his swing before the Masters. He changed his personality, Newt, and I thought it was a terrible mistake.
All right. Well, for what it's worth, he's acknowledging that was the wrong strategy. At this point, though, going forward,
right.
For example, let me give you the latest. There's a super PAC ad out in favor of Newt Gingrich. Here is the latest ad.
Romney's economic plan, timid. Parts of it virtually identical to Obama's failed policy. Timid won't create jobs, and timid certainly won't defeat Barack Obama. Newt Gingrich's bold leadership balanced the budget, reformed welfare, helped create millions of new jobs. The Gingrich Jobs Plan, a powerful plan for growing our economy and creating jobs. Rebuilding the America we love with bold conservative leadership.
I'm Newt Gingrich, and I approve this message.
Direct hit against Romney. Effective?
Well, it would have been effective, I think, in Iowa. I think it would have been more effective in Iowa. That would have been a very strong commercial, I think. But, he didn't use it there. And I do understand why, but I just feel it was a big mistake. Yeah, I think it's effective with certain people. Absolutely.
All right, so you're really telling me you like Gingrich, you like both of them. You like Santorum, and you like Romney.
Well, I don't know Santorum to the extent. I think that all of them are much different than people feel. I think they have a lot of great qualities, and I'm going to make a decision over the next couple of weeks. I will make a decision over the next couple of weeks as to what I'm doing. In the meantime, the reason I had to switch is if I didn't switch before January 1st, I wouldn't have been able to run as an independent candidate.
Okay.
So I had no choice but to switch.
So you just left the door open for yourself.
I totally left the door open. And people are filing, they call it the Make America Great Party, which I happen to think is a great name.
I like it.
Because, it's too bad they can't use the word again, Make America Great Again Party, because the word again is really a very accurate word when it comes, because we are really just being decimated by other countries and laughed at by other countries. I mean, look at what's happening in Iraq. It's falling apart. With all of the years and all of the lives and all of the trillions that we've spent, 1.5 trillion, it's absolutely falling apart. And the party that's really doing well is the anti-United States party, anti-America party. It's a vicious group of people that hate this country. That's the party that's doing the best.
I'll tell you, 2 articles today made me think of you when I was preparing for the show today. One was the businesses after getting a big bailout, GM is going to move the Chevy Volt production to China. And then the second thing is, it was in the American Thinker, here Iran is, firing missiles in the Straits of Hormuz, which, for those that don't understand, this is the sole line of shipping for oil out of the Middle East.
Correct.
All right. So, and they're telling American ships, warships, you come back here, we're gonna fire it.
Right.
And they're plotting and planning the assassination of, foreign dignitaries on American soil.
Right. So
and
why
Obama
did you
does
think
nothing.
Of me?
Well, I thought of you for those are 2 stories that just show how weak this president is.
And if I were running things, they wouldn't even be out there. Those stories would not be out there. That Iran can do that. Now, I've also said, in my opinion, Obama doesn't talk to anybody. He thinks he's above people. And he won't talk to anybody other than his wife when he's flying on Air Force One and laughing at how stupid the Americans are to have put him in that position. Can you imagine those conversations as they get onto Air Force One saying...
Well, wait a minute. Did you say Her Excellency to Michelle Obama? She prefers to be called that.
Can you imagine those conversations that they must have sitting together in Air Force One as they're flying to Hawaii for a vacation?
All the country suffering.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall. So anyway, but when you think about the way Iran is talking to us, however, we should be talking. We should be speaking. It's not weak to talk to people, right? But we don't talk to anybody. We don't. I say that he starts a war in Iran before the election, which will make it very hard for the Republican to win. Okay. And I've said that, and I predicted that. He doesn't talk to anybody. He'll start a war. Lives would be wasted for no reason.
I got to tell you, that would be the most chilling. That would be the most chilling abuse of power, is what you're describing in American history.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. Sometime prior to the election, there'll be some kind of a war started. Instead of working it out, which you can do very easily, and not from weakness. Hey, look, it's called be a tough negotiator. You have a lot of strength. But rather than doing that, I predict that he will start some kind of a war / skirmish or conflict, and will be very hard then, because you remember how popular Bush was right after the World Trade Center. I mean, nobody could have beaten him. George Washington could not have beaten him for about 2 months. And then he decided to go in to get Iraq, which, by the way, had nothing to do with knocking down the World Trade Center, but these are minor details. But, you remember how popular he was. Well, I predict that that's what's going to happen with Obama.
That is one of the most frightening predictions. And by the way, you may not be wrong.
Okay.
That's pretty frightening.
And then they won't be talking about Romney or Gingrich or Santorum. They'll be talking about our great president and our great leader.
That would be the single greatest abuse of power you're describing.
And it will be in a mess, but you'll have the election, and he'll win the election if that happens, and it would be terrible. But I've actually said that. I've actually stated that, and I state it to you right now. That's the way. I think that's frankly, because I really believe that the Republicans will win the election quite easily if it's the right person, et cetera, and if there's no third party.
But why are you not, let me ask you, honestly, why are, at this late date, and you've had an opportunity, you've watched every debate, because I've interviewed you afterwards.
Right.
All right, you saw what happened in Iowa. We're now headed to New Hampshire. The process is fully underway.
Right.
You know the strengths and weaknesses. We can all, regurgitate all of them on every candidate. I'm sure you make decisions very early on about certain contenders on Celebrity Apprentice. You've got to have a gut feeling for who you like and don't like, who you can support and not support.
I just haven't revealed it yet, and I do have a gut feeling, and I have a feeling. And at some point over the not-too-distant future, I'm going to be making a decision.
Yeah. All right. Do you think you'll do it before? South Carolina seems to be key. You're going to do it before then?
I think so, before South Carolina, maybe. Yeah.
And there's one person you're leaning towards.
Look, in my mind, I know sort of everybody, and I've had a lot of pressure put on me as to by everybody wanting an endorsement. I represent millions of people because millions of people listen to your shows. I do your shows.
I'm just pressuring you to announce it here. I'm not pressuring who to.
Well, no, they really. I'm talking about the candidates want me because millions of people are tired of being ripped off, and they know that I'm not somebody that gets ripped off. And they're tired of what's happening to this country. Like you say about your friend in China, where they're laughing at us. They are laughing at us. I have many friends in China. I sell apartments to Chinese people where they come to this country and they buy apartments in New York City for big numbers, like one at $33 million. And they can't believe that we don't do anything. They can't believe that Obama is talking about China like they're wonderful people, and it's what they're doing to us is incredible. You know, about 2 weeks ago, he was defending China and defending their manipulation of the currency, and I sat watching this on television, and I couldn't believe it. And you probably said the same thing to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Let me shift gears for 1 second. Now, you did reveal your net worth in your book, which I read the book cover to cover, liked it a lot. It's a bestseller. Congratulations. But here's what I want to ask you. For the average person, and this is how I spent most of my life, that doesn't have the millions of dollars. The people that are fighting to hang on to their house, their job,
right,
the little bit of retirement they put away.
Right.
And, you know, recently I've read that you took payment in gold, for example. Recently I read that you don't have any money in the stock market. Or very little.
Not much.
Most of your money's in real estate.
Stock market.
What do you say to
I can lose my own money. I don't have to let other people lose it for me. You know.
What do you say to the average person that is scared to death that the Eurozone is going to collapse, that it's going to head over to America, that we're going to have another double-dip recession, more jobs are going to be lost? What do you say to the person? What should they do with their money? What would you advise them?
Well, first of all, the euro was created in order to hurt the United States. Okay, so, let's not feel too badly for them. They got themselves into a big fat mess, and they were stupid to do it because, like if Greece could roll its printing press, which they can't because they don't make the euro, but if you had the drachma and if you had whatever they wanted to, whatever you want to call it over there, they wouldn't have the problems that they have right now. Now, ultimately, they would have the ultimate problem because, at some point it all goes into dust. But the euro was created in order to compete against the United States and to hurt the United States. It was sort of a smaller time version of what the Chinese are doing to us. And so I don't feel too badly about it. I think the euro is highly overrated in terms of this country. In fact, you could make the case that if the euro goes bad, that this country could benefit. Okay, you understand what I'm saying?
Sure, absolutely.
I really believe.
I think in the short term, absolutely.
I really believe it's highly because what's going to happen? They're going to pour their money into dollars when the euro goes bad.
Right away.
Okay, so I don't like to blame. Obama likes to blame outside forces. I actually think the euro going down the tubes could be a benefit to the United States in a certain.
But I worry that's only short term. In the long term, we follow in their path.
Well, the way we're going with our spending, we're going to follow in their path because we cannot continue to spend the way we're spending. I mean, they set up a committee because we have no leader. So they set up a committee, and the committee can't even agree to cut anything. And you're talking about they wanted to cut $1.2 trillion, and we should be able to cut $4 to $5 trillion. And it's impossible to believe that that committee was such a failure. But on your show, I said it wasn't going to work. I mean, and it didn't work. The reason it didn't work is because we have a president that loves golf and I love golf too, by the way, loves golf.
Yeah, I love it too, but I play it 3 times a year.
On Air Force One.
Yeah. Here's.
By the way, do you know how much it costs to fly a 747 to Hawaii?
Per hour, I think.
Well, especially with all of the people in the military and millions. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars. You're not talking about. I know more about airplanes than.
But for the average person in the short term, you tell them stay out of the stock market. Maybe look for good real estate deals.
I would say the best thing for a person to do is go to a bank and invest in real estate at really low numbers where the bank finances it. The banks have really let this country down because they don't put up money. But they will put up money on a foreclosed house that they own. In other words, they'll give you a mortgage and ask for like a 20-year, 25-year mortgage, low interest rates, very little amortization at a really low price. But you can only buy houses that are owned by the banks because that's the only way they'll take back paper. If you buy a house, even if you have great credit, and if you go to a bank, they won't give you money, or they'll give you 40%. Whoever heard of 40%? But if you go to a bank and they own thousands and thousands of houses, they don't know what to do with them. It's a great time. I would say the best thing you could do is go to a bank and make a deal, and maybe even on more than one.
And this is for people that have good credit, but maybe don't have a lot of money to put down, and they can rent it out and pay their mortgage and own the property, and that's their retirement.
Who had 20-year mortgages, and the mortgage just came up. They haven't missed a payment. They weren't late on one payment.
Yeah.
And literally, if the payment came due on a Sunday, they'd send it out on a Friday, okay? Yeah. So these are great people. They never missed a payment in 20 years. Their mortgage comes up, and the bank insists on paying it off or they're going to foreclose.
Last thing. Here we have in America, the world's technological leader, as it relates to the photography industry, Eastman Kodak.
Unbelievable.
And here Eastman Kodak is preparing to seek bankruptcy protection. How sad is that?
Well, Fujifilm did a number of them for years, and honestly, their leadership was never good because I always used to wonder how they allowed Fuji to come in and do on the film. Now, then they didn't keep up with technology, and, it became obsolete and lots of bad things. Kodak had horrible leadership, like this country has. The same thing is going to happen to this country as happened to Kodak. Fuji came in and ate their lunch.
Yeah.
The quality was the same, and instead of having leaders that went to the president and the people and said, you've got to protect us from these people, because what they did is they priced their product so low that Kodak couldn't compete. Then after that, they didn't go digital fast enough, and Kodak made a lot of mistakes. But Kodak had the same leadership as our country currently has.
All right, Donald Trump, thanks for joining us. Your first appearance in 2012. We'll check in with you often, and we always appreciate you spending so much time with us. Thanks for being with us.
You are fantastic.
And congratulations, by the way, on the book. And if you want to get the book, it's in bookstores everywhere. Time to Get Tough by Donald Trump.